auction that happened in New York City, a digital art auction, not that many people, so we should maybe explain that real quickly. Anybody raise their hand? Maybe can you give me like a summary? Okay, yeah, Nick, do you want to give me a summary? Yeah. But can't make it too pessimistic, try to be objective.
Okay. Last week there was this amazing auction, that's subjective, right? Amazing? So there was this auction organized by Tumblr, Phillips, an auction house in New York on Park Avenue, and Tumblr, yeah, Lindsay Howard curated it. It was a show, an auction selling digital artworks that were partially, sometimes digital, sometimes not digital, but digital. You can Google it, it's Paddles On, that was the name of the auction, like Paddles Online, fantastic name. And they sold all the work, it was like everything got sold. A gift was sold for, I think it was $800, someone can correct me on that. There was prints that sold for like $14,000, and the artist took 80%, and Rhizome gets the other 20%. So it was like very groundbreaking and special, and the prints of the digital things were apparently digital also, which was weird for me, but I accept it now because prints are this like very special, meaningful physical object that you can stand in front of and get this aura. I don't know who wrote that thing about the aura stuff, like you get the aura from the work, but if somebody knows that reference, who was it? Walter Benjamin, Age of Mechanical Reproduction, right? That's what it is. If you need a PDF, I have 50 of them. I'll email them to you. I'm going to pass it over to Nick. Check out the auction thing.
Wait, did you know?
Yeah. He's my favorite. I read him like 30 times.
Okay, that's going to be weird. It's going to seem like we set that up. I'm going to talk about Walter Benjamin and the aura in a second. But I think Nick just, he's that, cued into the conversation. Did you mention how much money they made?
I don't know the exact.
They made over $90,000. They made $90,600. And some digital works were sold, like actual files, between $1,000 to $3,000 for digital files. Okay, so just want to make sure everybody, so now everybody knows what the auction is. Okay, cool, so I'm going to start. Okay, so there was this auction that we all know about at Phillips, and there was a whole bunch of really good vibes. And I kind of shared in those good vibes. Just wanted to also let you know that there was a lot of good vibes at this auction. Yeah, there was a lot of really good vibes. Some of those vibes. Congratulations, so many artists made so much money tonight. They were paid around for like 4 months right now. This is great. Congratulations, so many artists made so much money tonight. They were paid around for like 4 months right now. This is great. Congratulations, so many artists made so much money tonight. They were paid around for like 4 months right now. This is great. Congratulations, so many artists made so much money tonight. They were paid around for like 4 months right now. This is great. Congratulations, so many artists made so much money tonight. They were paid around for like 4 months right now. This is great. Congratulations, so many net artists made so much money tonight. They can pay their rent for like 4 months right now. This is great. Congratulations for so many. Do you guys know who that is? Hennessy Youngman? He's one of my favorite media artists. Okay, so that happened. So there's a lot of good vibes in our community because it was like, oh my god, we sold animated just for thousands of dollars. So something I want to say about that though is that there's sometimes I could be confused as like this is a first, people love First, and like this is a serious event because the first time this happened. There was a lot of good vibes related to this event sort of validating net art and validating new media art and it being a point of like now this is legit. But since we're all new media artists, net artists, and work with digital art, we're contemporary artists, we know that kind of work has been legit for a long time, maybe something like 20 years, in the sense that for 20 years they've been shown in like major institutions and festivals, and a lot of books have been published. MIT Press exists, that's a thing that exists. And this is also not the first time that digital, exclusively sort of only files, like digital files were sold. Digital files get sold all the time. Young Jake recently mentioned to me that he sold a Vine for $200 to a collector who had purchased Vines before. So this is a thing that happens. Still, the Phillips auction kind of represents something special that might have something to do with the context that all that stuff was sold at. Phillips, as an auction house, maybe you don't know, has been around for over 300 years. They've been selling art
for over 300 years, so that's sort of a big deal, and this was their first 100 pure digital art auction. So there's that. So there was a lot of good vibes, and a big reason why is beautifully sort of illustrated by Lindsay Howard, who is the curator. Oh wait, this is not the right article. This is okay. So Lindsay Howard was the curator of the whole thing. This is Lindsay Howard. If you don't know, how many people know who Lindsay Howard is? Okay, if you're a digital artist and you don't know who Lindsay Howard is, you should familiarize yourself because she is the patron saint of new media artists. She's done a lot of work to get people's work out there, and she's somehow extremely with it at the same time. She's a very rare breed of curator. And so she put this on and a bunch of other stuff on. And people asked her, why are you doing this? Or why do you do this in general? And she had a really good response that I want to read. So this is her response to why she's doing all this. So she said, for me personally, I did this exhibition at our micro patronage last year, which was a much smaller but very sincere exploration into monetizing online work. And in the past years, I have had close interactions with artists at 319 Skulls, which is a space that she runs. However, the instances of when I've seen an enormously talented digital artist get swooped up by Coca-Cola or Nike or a digital agency to hire them to push product have been so disheartening. These are exceptionally talented individuals who have a lot to offer the art world and the creative community in general, but because of economics, they are forced into situations of needing to work for larger companies. I've made it my mission to build out the market so that these artists don't have to do this, so they don't have to do this, so they can be recognized as individuals for their creativity and talent. Okay, so Philips represents a break from having to go work for Coca-Cola, Nike, or a digital agency, which is what a lot of digital artists end up doing. So, I respect Lindsay Howard tremendously, and I understand where she's coming from, and what she's saying is true, I think, but there's implications here. This is a thing when you say things in public forums, that there's sort of implications, and we read something, and then we sort of infer more than what is being said. And so the implications are that maybe somehow Philips and the auction house represent something outside of capitalism, somehow outside of corporate control, outside of Coca-Cola, Nike, or digital agencies. But that's not how the world works. Power and control and these systems are way more discursive than that. My friend Foucault can attest to. I'll just print this out very quick. Okay. And so, just as an example of how sort of intertwined this all really is. So Raphael Rosendahl, he sold one of his websites, and he's been selling websites for a while, but he sold a website for $3,500, and he sold it to the CEO of the Barbarian Group. Anybody know the Barbarian Group? Barbarian Group is awesome. I'm a big fan of the Barbarian Group. They're a digital agency, and they push product. Their clients, so the Barbarian Group is a digital agency, and they push products for Pepsi and Nike, among others, not Coca-Cola, but Pepsi and Nike. So Raphael Rosendahl, fortunately, does not have to go work for a digital agency who pushes product for Coca-Cola and Nike. Instead, he can make his own websites and sells them to the CEO of the Barbarian Group who pushes products for Pepsi and Nike. That's not a bad thing. So that might maybe sound like a bad thing, because it maybe seems like, oh shit, so it's all sort of intertwined. But Foucault would slap me in the face if I conflated power with evil. That is not a bad thing. The point is that this is all just a little bit more complicated, and we got to approach it with a little bit more nuance. The Barbarian Group is actually super rad. They make a lot of money pushing products for Pepsi and Nike, and then they use that money to sort of create really rad open source projects like Cinder. Anybody use Cinder? Any creative coders who use Cinder? Joe uses Cinder, so Joe appreciates Cinder, and so that's a pretty dystopian tactic, and I respect that because there's nothing outside of capitalism. You got to work within it. Barbarian Group knows how to do that, as does Raphael Rosendahl. But to suggest that there's a difference is just a little bit of an oversimplification. So my point. Oh, I forgot a slide. By the way, this is the way I've started performing, and this is part one of the talk called The Golden Calf. I was going to say that before I started talking about money and false idols, but pretend I said that before. Okay. Okay, so point of the golden calf. This is all a little bit complicated, and we would benefit from coming at this a little nuanced. And there's a whole bunch of ways we could break this down. No business yet. Not yet. No business yet. No. Oh, what the fuck? Nobody's allowed to buy. All right. Okay. All right. Well, from now on, nobody buys. Okay. So. That happens. Okay, so point of the story, this is all a little bit more complicated. There's nothing outside of capitalism. We all it's a very discursive, intertwined scenario. We can break this down in a whole bunch of different ways. There's a lot of performances tonight, so I'm just going to kind of pick one way to break this down. And I want to talk about what Nick already introduced for me, which is the aura. So part 2, the aura. Okay. So I want to point out right now that this whole talk and performance is 100% original material, which is to say that it's made up entirely of other people's stuff, because that's how creativity works. And hopefully, as digital artists, we're very familiar with this idea. Copying, combining, and transforming other people's stuff is how you make new stuff. Copying and pasting. This is how creativity works, which is why I love new media so much. Because new media has this principle of copying and pasting built into its actual, the technology. It's fundamental to new media is being able to copy and paste. And as a creative person, that gets me very excited. So, just to illustrate why that's such a beautiful and exciting thing, I have a quote from more people. So the fact that digital files can be infinitely reproduced, freely spread from one to another over the globe for the moral and mutual instruction of man and improvement of his condition, seems to have been peculiarly and benevolently designed by programmers when they made them, digital files, like fire, expansible over all space without lessening their density in any point, and like the air in which we breathe, move, and have our physical being, incapable of confinement or exclusive appropriation. Digital works then cannot in nature be subject of property. Society may give an exclusive right to the profits arising from them as an encouragement to men to pursue digital work which may produce utility, but this may or may not be done according to the will and convenience of the society without claim or complaint from anybody. So that's a quote by Thomas Jefferson. I changed some of the words from the quote. He was talking about digital files. He was actually talking about ideas, but besides, if you just replace digital files with ideas, that's a quote, it's Thomas Jefferson quote. So I'm going to screenshot this one. Don't sell this thing.
Sorry. Yeah. We're selling digital art. It's crazy.
Okay. So why am I bringing up Thomas Jefferson? For 2 reasons. Reason number 1, I just want to point out that nothing that I'm saying is all that radical. These are very old ideas that have been around for a very long time. Number 2 is I just really love this quote because I want to highlight how beautiful and important this copying and pasting characteristic is. It's beautiful and it's also incredibly problematic for digital artists. In this article, The Verge demonstrates why it's beautiful but also an incredibly problematic characteristic of digital media for digital artists. So this this is another article about the Philips auction. They talk about Philips and they say how like Philips sells a ton of art for a ton of money, usually millions of dollars. Digital art stuff didn't quite go for millions of dollars, but normally they sell shit for millions of dollars. And they explain why that's a thing, in case you don't know why that's a thing. They say fine art, unlike other media industries, pushes prices this high in part because of its perceived rarity and unique, unquantifiable quality of each individual work. Music, film, and publishing have been forced to adapt as their products became more numerous and often instantly accessible. For many, that's meant making physical experiences of the work more valuable, from 3D movie premieres to limited edition vinyl pressings. But art, grounded as it is in the practice of paying vast sums for a single irreplaceable object, never faced quite the same challenge. So it can be difficult to market artwork that's impossible to really own in the sort of hanging on the wall sense. So that's why it's always tricky to sell digital art, because it's just not inherently scarce, right? And like I said, folks have sold digital art before. Folks, a couple years ago, they were selling animated GIFs at the Armory show. I don't know if anybody caught this. And the way they were making those just valuable were by forcing scarcity on them. So they said, how are you going to sell animated GIFs? Rhizome at the Armory show. And Rhizome said, well, we're going to remove them from the internet so that the collector can hold it exclusively, so they can have their own copy. And that, does everybody remember that? And that was like a shitstorm. People were just like, whoa, you cannot take net art off the net because then it's no longer net art. There was like a lot of fights and really cool art that came out of that. Okay, so I want to combine these two ideas of the wonderful beauty, amazingness that is infinite reproducibility, and this issue of scarcity with Walter Benjamin's auras. How many of us have already read a work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction as media artists, maybe? Okay, so like half. So I'll give you like the other half, a really, really quick cliff notes, recontextualized cliff notes of that essay. So there's an essay, it's called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction by Marxist critical theorist named Walter Benjamin, who was writing in the 30s. And he was talking about art, specifically the difference between contemporary art and old-fashioned art. So for him, he was living in the 30s. So contemporary art meant cinema, and old-fashioned art meant like painting, how people used to make art. Remember what people used to paint to make art. So he was like, here's the thing with old school art. If you've got an old school art piece, like a painting that you really, really like, and you want to show it to your friend, you just can't send them a link and be like, yo, check out this really rad painting, it's called the Mona Lisa, because you can't email paintings. So if you really like the Mona Lisa, you have to tell your friends. Yeah, well also in the olden days there's no email. So then you'd be like, oh, you should really check it out, it's called the Mona Lisa, it's in Paris. And then you'd be like, okay, cool, and you have to buy a plane ticket, or you have to get on a boat, and you have to cross the Atlantic Ocean, and this is like crazy Mecca pilgrimage just to be able to see the Mona Lisa. And then when you get there and you see the Mona Lisa, you're just like, oh my god, there it is. And instead of sitting and thinking like, oh, what was Leonardo da Vinci trying to tell me, what is this piece about, you're completely distracted by its celebrity, and instead you just stand in front of it and take a selfie, right? How many people have seen the Mona Lisa? How many people who've seen the Mona Lisa have taken a picture of the Mona Lisa? Probably more or less. And how many of you have sat in front of the Mona Lisa and contemplated what was Leonardo da Vinci trying to tell me when he painted this? Probably, I'm going to say nobody. And so this is Benjamin's aura, right? It's really hard to get to work. It's super inaccessible, old school work anyways, like paintings. And when you get there, you're so distracted by its celebrity that you don't really think about it. At least you don't, there's certain kinds of engagements that they're off the table. So I want to bring some connections together. I'm going to read from something that I wrote, but it's a thing that I wrote where I'm quoting other people, so I'm still kind of quoting myself through other people. So this is where copy and paste and Jefferson and the oral come together. So Benjamin was interested in breaking down certain distinctions, namely the artist-audience divide, right? Because there's a divide between who's an artist and who's an audience, less so in this room. So he saw that this was possible due to a particular relationship between art and technology, specifically intercapitalism. So mechanical reproduction would make possible the participation of the masses in art and politics. It brought with it certain democratic possibilities. The withering of the oral, that is to say its uniqueness, the uniqueness of the work, meant that the oral was no longer an inaccessible ritual, but could instead become a political agent for the masses. Film, which was, his new art form, film, and this was possible with film because of the technology, because it was infinitely reproducible, right? The film would come to you. You didn't have to go to the film. This involvement and the distance that granted the audience a critical perspective. So side note, we got a little bit more reading, but just to interject, cinema for Benjamin was Soviet cinema, which is different from Hollywood, which was also kind of happening in the 30s. In Russia, folks, it wasn't like films were something that came to you rather than you go into the film, right? So there's already a little bit of the euro breaking down, but also the fact that if you were watching a butcher in an old Russian movie, that was probably the local butcher. And if there was a mailman, that was probably the local mailman. This was a trend, you know, throughout Europe in the middle centuries. Sort of Italian neorealism was the same way. You used a lot of real people. So Benjamin was kind of looking at this, getting excited, thinking, shit, man, not only is the art coming to the people, but the people are actually in the art. They're both consuming and participating. And he was like, cinema can be a participatory, you know, culture. But then Hollywood happened. So it didn't turn out that way. Hollywood kind of reintroduced the kind of celebrity, and so maybe that didn't quite happen. Today, though, Lawrence Lessig. Anybody know Lawrence Lessig? Some people. Okay. I'm a big fan of him. So Lawrence Lessig, he's a writer, law professor, possibly maybe the foremost authority on like what we call remix culture these days. And he describes our participatory culture, or what he calls read-write culture, as the sort of opposite of this purely consumer culture, what he calls read-only culture, which is this sort of culture of the past. He claims that youth today not only consume media, but take it, remix it, and share it online. He claims that anyone with access to a decent computer and an internet connection can take part in this new culture. And in taking part in that new culture, thus the distinction between the author and public is about to lose its basic character. The difference becomes merely functional. It may vary from case to case. At any moment, the reader is ready to turn into a writer. That's not Lessig, that's Walter Benjamin. This is kind of where this comes together, right? Okay. So what's my point? So cinema didn't quite kill the aura, the celebrity. If anything, maybe it kind of reintroduced it. But perhaps internet can maybe question the aura in the Benjaminian sense. It might have this potential, and if it does have this potential, we should probably protect and leverage that potential. So my question about the Phillips auction: does the Phillips auction help break down the aura, or like Hollywood, does it put it back? So Phillips auction, is it breaking down the aura? Who's in favor of the Phillips auction breaks down the aura? Nobody. Who's in favor that the Phillips auction adds more aura back to the mix like Hollywood? Damn. Okay, so then I'm going to try to devil's advocate. This is why I think actually the Phillips auction is breaking down the aura. So unlike previous incarnations of this attempt to market new media art, where scarcity was forced on digital works, scarcity was not forced on digital works in the Phillips auction. Nicholas Sassoon sold the GIF for $1,300, and that GIF is on one of my class blogs still, and that's fine. And he still sold it for $1,300. Raphael Rosendahl sold his website for $3,500, the one that he sold to the guy from Barbarian Group who pushes product for Pepsi and Nike. And Raphael Rosendahl has a contract that says that that guy who pushes product for Pepsi and Nike has to leave that website on the internet, and he's responsible to keep paying for the hosting of that site. So he bought that work and also has the obligation to make sure that that shit stays on the internet. Petra Cartwright sold one of her YouTube videos for $3,200, and not only is that shit still on YouTube, but it gets increasingly more valuable as people watch it on YouTube, because she came up with this whole metric where the more views, the more she sells the work for. So in some ways, maybe this is creating a space in an object-oriented market where actually, non-scarce, infinitely reproducible works are still worth a few $1,000s. So maybe that's kind of withering the aura. So how many of you think that it's withering, that the Phillips auction is withering the aura? I think, okay, nobody? So everybody's still on the other side or something? Okay, yeah, so also there's an argument to be made maybe that the Phillips auction is not withering the aura. I've got some metrics. I'm going to talk about this. So this is graph number 1. So when I was looking at the prices, I noticed that Raphael Rosendahl's digital piece sold the most, Petra Cartwright afterwards, and Molly Soda after that. And this is on the right, these are their Google ranks. So this smaller number is better, it means you're higher ranked on Google. So So there's a direct correlation between how internet famous they are and how much money they sold. So there may be a, kind of a celebrity thing going on in terms of its metrics. Also, if we look at some more charts that I made. So Rosendahl sold a website, but he also sold a print. Petra Cartwright sold a YouTube video, but she also sold a print. And there's another sort of trend or pattern here that the print is worth 3 times as much as the digital work. So what does that, where does that thought process take us? That's a dangerous thought process to go down. Okay, so the last and final part 3, Battle Zone. That was the name of the auction. I'll stop. So just, okay, I'm gonna start the auction. I'm serious. Also, I forgot one thing. This is an 80-20 split, like the Phillips auction. I'm gonna take 80. I'm gonna give Tritriangle 20%. So it's another sort of indirect way to donate to Tritriangle. All right. If you forget the tiers, it's a little bit complicated. I realize the metrics I'm using are kind of tricky, but Nick, we went through it with Nick, so he's gonna handle that, sign it for me, and then give you the print. So I'm gonna start the auction. Okay.
Still means the same. Alright.